This morning, the Bryan law firm and the Innocence Project filed a state habeas petition in the Cole County Circuit Court. That petition sets out compelling new evidence that George Allen is innocent and that he had spent the last 29 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. We have asked the court to overturn the conviction and to release Mr. Allen. The first jury that heard the case actually hung 10-2 in favor of acquittal. He was then convicted by a second jury at another trial. George Allen was and is profoundly mentally ill. He was arrested over a month after the crime simply because he was walking in the LaSalle Park neighborhood where the victim was killed, and the police mistakenly thought that he was another man who they were looking for. They figured out at the police station that George Allen was not that man, and yet they interrogated him anyway. And George Allen, who is diagnosed schizophrenic, who was picked up off the street by accident, gave a confession. Now, that confession, by today's standards, would never be enough for a conviction. The confession was obtained through highly leading questioning, and the few details that George Allen offered were for the most part completely inconsistent with the known facts of the crime. And George Allen also lived 10 miles away in University City. And as many people will remember, this was during the big snow of 1982 that immobilized huge portions of the city. 3 witnesses, including George Allen's mother, who's here today, testified that George Allen was at home at the time of the crime, snowed in. And the police were never able to explain how George Allen got 10 miles across town in 20 inches of snow on the ground. No eyewitnesses placed George Allen at the scene. No fingerprints connected him. There was no connection whatsoever between George Allen and this victim. But he was prosecuted based on the confession. He was also prosecuted based on serology testimony given by a police lab analyst stating that there was semen consistent with him at the crime. And a witness also testified to corroboration of a detail that was in the confession. The newly discovered police and lab documents, which were not turned over to the defense or the prosecution, show that the police actually found 2 semen donors on the clothing that the victim was wearing at the time of the attack. Now, one of these semen donors had a blood type that was consistent with Mr. Allen and the victim's boyfriend, and in fact, the victim's estranged husband. And that blood type was the one that was revealed at trial, and now we know from DNA testing that semen was not George Allen's. But what we have also now learned is that the police suppressed test results showing semen from another donor, semen that could not have been from George Allen. And crucially, that semen also could not have been from the victim's boyfriend or her ex-husband. That other semen donor had B antigens in his semen. George Allen is what's called a non-secretor. That's somebody who does not secrete any antigens in their semen. The importance of this evidence cannot be overstated. This victim was raped and murdered. The police found foreign semen on the clothing the victim was wearing at the time of the attack. That semen did not come from George Allen. In fact, we've also found police documents, again, not disclosed to the prosecution or the defense, showing that the police were collecting samples from people connected with the crime. And they were testing those samples precisely because they believed that the that the perpetrator was someone who secreted B antigens. And at some point, someone with access to those lab documents literally crossed out those findings. This evidence was clearly harmful to the state, and police never revealed it to the prosecution or the defense. This was a serious violation of Mr. Allen's constitutional rights, and it is clear that the jury never would have convicted them, never would have convicted Mr. Allen had they known about this evidence. Now, for memory of that detail, the police actually sent her to a hypnotist prior to trial to question her on that memory. And even back then, back in 1983, the dangers of hypnosis were well known. Danger to actually change somebody's memory. The prosecution put this witness on the stand without ever knowing that she had been uncertain and that she'd been hypnotized. With this new evidence, every shred of corroboration that the police had for this dubious confession is now wholly debunked. There's no doubt what this evidence shows. It shows that George Allen is innocent and that his conviction was obtained unconstitutionally.